Hi, hello. My name is Pedro Lopes and I'm part of the Database Security Product Management team. In this session, we'll see how to take an Oracle Autonomous Database security to the next level. But first, let's start with some basics on what is exactly an Oracle Autonomous Database. The Autonomous Database is a family of database cloud services that are typically described using their three leading attributes. They are self-driving, which means all database and infrastructure management, monitoring, and tuning is automated for you. They are self-securing, which means they protect themselves from all external attacks as well as internal attacks. And they are also self-repairing, which means they protect themselves from any downtime, including planned maintenance operations. At the end, the whole objective of this family of cloud services is to help you to spend less, reduce risk, and innovate more. So, what is really inside an Oracle Autonomous Database? The Oracle Autonomous Database is a managed cloud service that delivers Oracle database on Exadata infrastructure using automation and machine learning to optimize and run these systems. It is built to eliminate all database and infrastructure complexity. When it comes to deploying an autonomous database, you have a number of options. Most customers deploy it on the Oracle public cloud, but you can also deploy it on Exadata Cloud at Customer, dedicated region Cloud at Customer, and also in hybrid configurations. As today's session is on taking Oracle's most secure database to the next level, we must first understand what self-securing means. And essentially, all foundational security controls that protect your data against external and internal threats are in place. And things like, for example, encryption. All data is encrypted at rest and in motion. Customer data is protected from Oracle's operations staff with Database Vault. And the entire stack is patched and security updates are automatically applied. The only way an autonomous database is exposed to users is via the SQL layer, so that means there's no operating system access. The database is hardened out of the box, and there's no privileged access like a user with sysdba privileges. You have no access to the CDB, and you cannot do callouts to the operating system. So we will get into encryption, patching, and auditing next. When we talk about patching, what do we mean? So we mean that we will patch all components in the stack on demand for critical security issues if required as well. So this means firmware, operating system, hypervisor, clusterware, database, everything is patched for you. And patches are applied in a rolling fashion across rack nodes and Exadata storage servers, and they are automatically scheduled. Of course, if the patching schedule doesn't meet your patching window, you can also adjust the time range. So you can rest assured that your data is encrypted at rest. It is automatically configured, so your application data is encrypted using AES 256 at the tablespace level. And this will ensure that database backups are also encrypted. Also, when the data leaves and arrives in the database, it is encrypted in the wire using TLS. And this ensures that there is no unauthorized access to the autonomous database, and that communications between the client and server are fully encrypted and cannot be intercepted or altered. Customers can download client credentials via wallet files, and these wallets can be at the instance or at regional level, which means we would grant access to all your databases in that region. Autonomous databases support mutual transport layer security, MTLS, and with MTLS, clients connect through a TCPS, secure TCP, database connection using standard TLS 1.2 with a trusted client certificate authority file. Both the client application and autonomous database authenticate each other, and that means that it's very hard to have an unauthorized client to be speaking with the database. And the ADB uses MTLS authentication by default. Whenever, of course, when we talk about encryption, there is always the need to manage keys. And the autonomous database support two different options for encryption key management. It allows you to either encrypt using Oracle managed keys, which is the default, or encrypt using customer managed keys. For customer managed keys, the autonomous database integrates with OCI Vault. And what needs to happen is you first create an OCI Vault, and then you create a master encryption key, or even you can import your own, and then choose the option in the console encrypt using customer managed keys. Rotating keys won't require any downtime, which makes it simpler to address those specific regulatory requirements where you need to rotate keys periodically. So there's no downtime for that. Besides the discussed controls so far, I'd like to talk as well about auditing capabilities. And by default, an autonomous database uses unified audit policies to capture login failures, entitlement changes, and changes made to database structures like tables, procedures, and synonyms. You can create your own. You can enable, disable audit policies if you wish. And an important aspect is that you will have access to all audit data by querying the unified audit trail view, and that audit data will be retained for 14 days if you are running an autonomous database on shared infrastructure, and it will be held for 90 days if you use an autonomous database in dedicated infrastructure. What's important to highlight is that with the autonomous database, customers have access to Oracle DataSafe. And DataSafe enhances this capability. With DataSafe, you can hold up to 7 years of audit data, and that will allow you to meet stringent regulatory requirements. DataSafe also allows enabling and provisioning additional policies to meet STIG and CIS benchmark requirements. And of course, DataSafe is not only about helping autonomous database to get better and record audit data for longer. It has more features, and that's what we will cover next. So, but before we go there, it's key to understand that security in the cloud is a shared responsibility. So some parts are on the Oracle side, and some other parts are on the customer side. And so basic things like some of them we already discussed, like data encryption by default, network security, monitoring, operating system and platform security, database patches and upgrades, and administrative separation of duties are all taken care by Oracle. However, there are still some parts that are on the customer side of this responsibility. So things like running a security assessment, understand where you are, who are your users and privileges they have, where is the sensitive data, and further controls that you can add to protect data lay on customer side of this responsibility model. But usually when we present these topics, we get customers asking, what else? What tools does Oracle have to help me to address my share of responsibility? And how can I take security to the next level by adding these additional controls? And that's what DataSafe introduces. So we've seen ADB, that autonomous databases include several controls that can and make it out of the box the most secure Oracle database ever. But what else? So what else? What other security controls can I put in place to help me to further improve my security? What can you do? So one of the included services is Oracle DataSafe. And what is exactly Oracle DataSafe? So Oracle DataSafe is a unified database security console that provides 5 capabilities. So it provides security assessment capabilities, user assessment, activity auditing, data discovery, and data masking. And it was built with simplicity in mind, so it's accessible not only to security experts. It's included with all database services, and it is really simple to use with an autonomous database. It's really just a couple of clicks to enable it, and there you go. You can use it immediately with an autonomous database and start to benefit out of it. So I'll go now through 5 slides on each feature just to get you a bit more a clear understanding on what we mean by all of this. So the security assessment capability checks for database configurations, user roles and privileges, and it identifies which controls are in place and which ones are not that you could be using. I believe that security awareness is a very important aspect of securing a system, and this is something that the database security assessment capability gives you. At the end of this assessment, it will generate a report with the overall security posture, and below that will present the individual findings. It has specific checks for autonomous databases. So it means that if you run this against an on-premises database and run it against an autonomous database, some of the findings will react differently because not all databases are the same. It also allows you to set baselines and track and view drifts. So whenever there is a change from the baseline, you'll get an alert. The security assessment findings are also mapped to STIG and CIS requirements, and also GDPR articles and recitals. So this way you'll know exactly where you should focus to address specific regulatory requirements. And at the end, what security controls will help you to meet those security framework requirements. So the user assessment specializes in analyzing accounts that could pose a risk, and it does that by helping you identify high privileged users. So it will look into privilege and role grants, and based on that, will assess the potential risk of a user. It also enables you from that view to drill down into the activity auditing, and in case you want to go directly and see what a specific user was doing in your database. Activity auditing allows customers to provision audit policies and collect audit records. So after target registration, you can enable audit records collection. Those audit records will be transferred to DataSafe and can be purged from the source. And then after that, you can run reports and define alarms as well, or alerts, to get to know about sensitive operations that are happening in your database. Customers can also download reports in PDF or Excel format to demonstrate compliance and fulfill regulatory requirements. The fourth capability, and also part of DataSafe, is sensitive data discovery. And sensitive data discovery will help you to identify sensitive data held in tables. So it will help you discover around 125 sensitive types. So things like social security number, credit cards, first names, last names, addresses, and so on. And customers can also customize these types or add their own. Once the discovery process is done, customers get a detailed view on where their sensitive data is and how much. And then part of this sensitive data discovery, there is something that is built that is called the application data model. And this application data model essentially contains the metadata that contains information on the tables and columns and relationships between these objects in your data model. And this is leveraged by the fifth capability, data masking. Once you have identified the tables and columns and have built this application data model or sensitive data model, data masking will start from there and will help you to anonymize and mask sensitive data in non-production environments. So it provides rich masking transformation and formats. So things like give me random numbers or a random date, or do conditional masking, mask just a part of my string and things like that. So if you want to anonymize phone numbers, social security numbers, dates, credit cards from non-production environments, data masking got you covered. So in summary, with DataSafe, you got this set of essential security services included with your autonomous database. It requires no special security expertise and provides immediate value. It's completely different running something like this, where you use it more like a kind of a platform as a service, or a software as a service, I should say. You don't need really to put anything more in this, do not need to configure anything more in this service. You just use it immediately and start to leverage and benefit out of it. So you can use it no matter your database is on premises, in cloud, it's an autonomous database, on third-party cloud, and so on. So it's really great from that point. So apart from DataSafe, Oracle developed other features that are also included and can streamline and simplify autonomous database usage. And one example of this is OCI identities. And OCI identities are now integrated with database accounts. So that means you can enable an autonomous database instance to use Oracle Cloud Infrastructure authentication and authorization for users. So it means that you can use your OCI identity to access not only OCI and other services, but also your database. And with that, skip the need to have specific database user accounts. Both password-based and token-based authentication methods are supported. And password-based authentication works with any supported client. So it still uses a password, but you'll be using your IAM password and not your database user password. And we've seen OCI IAM integration, but wouldn't it be great if customers could also have the option to leverage the existing Azure AD for user authentication and authorization? And this is now available as well. Also, I'll take this chance to mention that this integration with Azure AD is also available for non-autonomous database. You need to apply this release update, July 2022, and you are able to do this as well. So with this Azure integration, customers really gain the ability to centrally manage these autonomous database users in Azure AD service. This allows an Azure AD user or even an application to access an Oracle Autonomous Database. Azure AD users and applications can log in Azure AD single sign-on and using their single sign-on credentials to get an Azure AD OAuth 2 token and pass it to the database. And this works not only with authentication, but also authorization, as we get schemas mapping for that. So this is quite interesting. And of course, this integration really helps to improve security. Centralizing user management in Azure AD will simplify certainly user management across multiple databases and reduce risk. So that means that instead of going to every single database and try to configure all these users and manage all these users, you can manage this from a central point. So for example, when an employee leaves a company or gets hired or change roles, you can just do that change in Azure AD from a central location, and that will become in effect for the databases that are using this approach and are integrated with User AD, which is quite interesting. This helps you to get rid of rogue and ghosts accounts, and maybe even overprivileged users if you move users from a different AD group to another. So management becomes really simplified. And also users managed in the Azure AD will honor lockout and password policies as well. So if a user gets locked after certain failed logins in AD, it will not be able to log into the database as well. Also, as now we move to manage database users in directory service, it allows also for further separation of duties between the DBA and who does user management. So with the access, with this token access, customers no longer need really to have separate database credentials. And it also adds support for MFA, multi-factor authentication, and common Azure AD flows. This integration also allows you to propagate user identity. So, for example, a customer can create an application that uses an application token to access the application. And then if a user within that app needs to access the database, the app can get an on behalf of token as the user to log into the database as the user. So that means that you won't get lost on whether it's the application or which user is accessing the database. The user identity is propagated to the database, so you know exactly who is doing what in the database. So the user identity is maintained there, and the application logs into the Oracle database with the user privileges and user roles, which is a very interesting use case. So you no longer use a generic account and users and roles. You can even do this specifically and individually at the user level. This AD integration certainly reduces the database user administration burden, because most of these user management activities will be done by the Azure AD admin. And this type of things that I just went through when I came back from vacation, oh, I forgot my password. Can someone reset my password? And how do I do it? And ask the DBA to do it or create a new account. All these things are gone because it becomes responsibility of the Azure AD administrator that is already doing this anyway. So there is no longer that need to go into each database and create, alter, drop users to cope with changes. That can suddenly all be done from a central place. So apart from this, what else is included? And what else do you have that can help me reduce risk and move ADB security to the next level? So privilege analysis is a great feature. And compromised accounts usually are the ones that are becoming, of course, the entry point for database hacks. So you got your credentials stolen, someone will get that list and try to get into a database and attack your database. So that means that accounts should have the least privileges they need to execute the tasks they have to execute, okay? Not less and not more. And if you do that, and if you aim for least privileges, that means that your blast radius of a compromised account will be reduced. So the impact will be a lot smaller than if you had an overprivileged account that got compromised. And what privilege analysis allows you to do is really to capture, while your database is running and getting workload, is to capture usage of privileges and roles. And then after this process, this capture process, and whenever you finish that capture process within this time frame, it will show you in database dictionary views which privileges were used and which privileges and roles were not used as well. So with that in mind, you know that, okay, within this time period, I've used this account and I didn't use this particular role that is high privileged. So maybe I can revoke it and just remove that from this specific user. And this is great because suddenly you have a tool that will help you to reduce privileges and revoke these privileges with a bit more confidence. Because one challenge is always, oh, I don't know, I would love to remove privileges, but I don't know actually what will be the impact in my applications if I revoke these privileges. With privilege analysis, you can do that. So you let it run for a period, then stop, and then you go back and check these database views, and then suddenly you know which privileges and rules you can revoke, and even you can identify if instead of accessing a table using a system privilege, like select any table, if you can just grant a specific object a privilege on that table to that user. and get rid of system privilege grants. So this is a great tool that can help you to increase security in your autonomous databases. Also, Oracle Database Vault is included with autonomous databases, and Database Vault helps you control privileged user access to sensitive data. With Database Vault, you can limit access to sensitive data to only authorized users. So that means even an administrator or a high privilege user or power user, if they don't require access to sensitive data or application data, you can disallow access. And if required, you can grant access in under certain conditions. So for example, my DBA doesn't have access to application data, but Thursday night I will have some a maintenance window and I would like to grant access. So you can add that DBA to the realm, and suddenly the DBA has access during that period of time, that by the way should be audited. And once that is done, you just remove it from the authorization list and it will lose access again. It also can also restrict specific commands from executing. So things like drop table, alter system, alter database, delete from certain tables. All of these you can just disable in production databases. So even if the user is authorized to do it, if you want to block it, you can apply a command rule to these commands and just block it from execution. So it's great to reduce human error. So that story that actually I've been through that with a customer where someone enters the IT department saying that, oh, I accidentally dropped the table. I thought that I was connected to development and I was connected to production. That can be prevented with Database Vault. Also, of course, it helps you to enforce separation of duties. And since this is a preventive control, if you have someone trying to override or to access an object that is protected by Database Vault, you can get an alert. And these audit records are valuable, okay, extremely valuable, because if you have an object where you did, or a table where you did put in place a preventive measure like a realm, and someone is trying to access and you get an audit record out of it, this is certainly some type of operation that shouldn't be happening. So this is another aspect where Database Vault can help to get valuable audit records. Last but not least, data reduction. And data reduction is essentially an excellent way to anonymize in real time sensitive data for read-only screens, okay? So, for example, if you have a read-only screen in your application that is getting sensitive data displayed, you can apply or define a data reduction policy in the database. And, for example, that reduction policy could substitute several numbers by asterisks. And whenever anyone reads data from that table and that column that has the policy applied, that data will be redacted or transformed on the fly to remove sensitive data out of it, or to make it, I'd say, dynamically masked. So a good example is, for example, a credit card. You don't want to show the full credit card number on an application. You might want to just display the 4 last digits, and all the others will be transformed into asterisks. Well, we've seen as well customers using this feature with tables that are REST enabled. So, for example, if you are doing an API call to get data out of a table, and that data or that table has sensitive data, and you want to change it on the fly for that API call, you can also use data reduction for it. So get endpoints will get redacted content from tables containing sensitive data. So, and to finalize, we've seen that starting with the included features like encrypting data at rest, in transit, the automated patching capabilities, and auditing, there's a lot more that can be done to take ADB security to the next level. And in summary, and starting with assess capabilities, data safe security assessment, data safe user assessment, and data discovery, along with privilege analysis, will help you to assess your current security posture and find out in a quick way how you could improve it. Moving to the detection part, data safe activity auditing, also as a way to manage audit data and provision audit policies to help you to meet these regulatory requirements where you need to audit activity and hold audit records for a long period of time. In the preventive capabilities, features that help limit access to data like data redaction, the database vault, along with other features that we did not cover today, like the virtual private database, label security, real application security, and so on. And also part of this preventive capability still, you can use data safe to anonymize sensitive data in non-production environments. In the authentication and authorization space, of course, the IAM integration or the Microsoft Azure AD integration will help to reduce the risk and user management burden. And of course, this all builds up on top of OCI, and we cannot forget other OCI features like the private endpoints, security lists, VCNs, ACLs, IAM policies, along with other services that we spoke today about Oracle DataSafe, but there's also OCI Vault for key management, OCI Audit, and more. And these are included with your autonomous database. So in summary, we've seen that there are several capabilities that will help you to take your autonomous database security to the next level. And this will be done by leveraging included features and OCI services like DataSafe. And all these proven security controls in autonomous database will help you to reduce the risk. So thanks for watching. My name is Pedro Lopes from the Database Security Product Management team, and I hope you enjoyed this session and enjoy Oracle CloudWorld. Please keep in touch. Bye.